I was walking towards the kitchen to make his coffee when he screamed my name from the bedroom. He was in his closet, yelling and tearing clothes off of hangers and discarding them all over the floor like a child throwing a tantrum. And before I had a chance to decipher what was going on, I see him pick up a wooden hanger and chuck it across the room with so much force that my body automatically flinched. And I covered my face. It smashed against the wall. I stood there, nervous, frozen, waiting to hear what I had done wrong this time. Because everything was always my fault. And behavior like this, it was normal. 30-second conversations turning into 2-hour accusations, blaming and berating like I was a potential suspect in a murder investigation. Today's crime? Not ironing his clothes to his standards. Accused of taking his dirty clothes out of the hamper and hanging them up filthy and wrinkled. I was lazy. And because he pulled me from the ghetto, I did not understand how to take care of nice things. His words, not mine. I'm not going to bore you with the countless of things he said to me. I think you get the picture. I swallowed my words, and I offered to iron whatever clothes he needed me to. This was my life. Head down, always submit. And as I begin to re-iron clothes that I had already ironed, I hear him yell from inside the bathroom, "Did you make my coffee?" I stood there torn between, do I finish ironing or do I make his coffee? And my first thought was, I should have woken up earlier. I need to do better. Now, this story might stir emotion in a few of you. And some of you might be thinking, well, maybe her ironing is actually awful. And see, that's what I want to talk about today, is these short stories that are told all over the world by men and especially women. They're very hard to decipher. I want to ask you, think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever retold a traumatic story and the person listening just isn't quite getting it, like they don't really understand the gravity of it? Imagine that story being the deciding factor on who gets child custody or whether or not an abuser is arrested. See, how do you describe fear? How do you describe trauma when there are no bruises, no cuts, and no evidence? See, this was my situation. I endured mental, emotional, sexual, and financial abuse that was so bad that it often had me on the floor of my bathroom in the dark, crying and screaming at the same time, because crying was no longer enough of an outlet to release all of my pain. That was all happening behind closed doors. On the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. There was fancy houses, fancy cars, big smiles, fake smiles. There was so much abuse happening behind closed doors. Invisible abuse, also known as coercive control. Now, this behavior was first acknowledged by the United Kingdom just recently in 2015. They passed a law to protect victims from this kind of abuse. Holds a sentence of 5 years. Then soon after, just recently again, 2020, here in the United States, California, enacted Senate Bill 1141. Now, although these milestones are creating a ripple effect for change, they also demonstrate the lack of knowledge up to this point, which is why I'm on this stage today. I want to discuss three main points: what invisible abuse looks and sounds like, who this is happening to, and why continuing to create a ripple effect for change is so important. Now, some of you might have heard of Patricia Evans. She is fully dedicated to educating people on this form of abuse. She has written 5 books, and she has researched over 30,000 cases in verbal abuse. She often talks about how abusers purposefully use coercive control because they know physical violence means jail. It's strategic. It's a pattern. First, build love and trust with the victim. Second, start to take control. The object of the game is to make somebody completely dependent on them, and there are several ways of doing this. The 2 most prevalent that you'll see everywhere is control all the money and keep you isolated from your family and your friends. These are master manipulators that use a combination of mind games that are nearly impossible to win. I want to describe 3 main types of techniques that abusers use. The first one, coercive control. It's a pattern of intimidation, humiliation, and threats used to harm, punish, or frighten the victim. 2, gaslighting. They deny events. They downplay situations. They make you question your own memory, your own perception. 3 is love bombing. When they sense that you're leaving, when they sense that you are fed up, they suddenly shower you with love, attention, gifts. Now, I don't know about you, but I love visuals. So I'm going to set this up for you. First, the abuser sets a foundation of love and trust. And this is confusing because all relationships are built on love and trust. The difference is an abuser, while they are building this foundation, will start to sprinkle in. They'll start to test the boundaries with something small, like name calling, just to see what happens. And you let this go because you see this beautiful foundation of love and trust being built. Then time goes on and they sprinkle in a little bit more of smashing of things, outbursts of anger. And as time goes on, you start to realize, oh my gosh, some red flags happening here. I need to leave. And you threaten to leave. This is when the gaslighting comes into the play. They downplay. You're exaggerating. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't remember it correctly. They blame you. It's your fault. If you wouldn't have done this, then I wouldn't have done that. And if that technique doesn't work, they flip to love bombing. You're the best. You're the greatest. You are number one. I will never do it again, I promise. Please just give me one more chance. Some of you here know that. One more chance. Give me one more chance. And you do. You drop your guard, and this is the cycle. And as time goes on, it gets worse. Sexual coercion through guilt and force, jealousy, threats, bullying. Imagine the confusion of the love and the trust. And then just out of nowhere, outbursts of anger. Daggers to the soul. One after the other. Dominating. Controlling, demeaning, severe, and verbal abuse. According to the National Library of Medicine, this poses a risk of post-traumatic stress disorder. That's PTSD. You see, on a biological level, these victims start to flow into a state of constant hypervigilance. Meaning they use all of their energy trying to make everything perfect every day in order to not get any punishments. That's the abuse. And in order to receive more rewards. That's the love bombing. You see, they don't know it's a game. This abuse doesn't see race, culture, color, religion, status, age, size. It does not discriminate. In 2018, the CDC found that 1 in 2 women and 1 in 3 men will endure this form of abuse at some point in their lifetime. And the reason they don't leave, there's lots of reasons. A few of them, fear of retaliation, pressure from religion and culture, shame. And to be quite honest with you, a lot of times these individuals, me included, don't even know it's abuse. Because we are told as a society that abuse is cuts and bruises. So by the time these individuals start to see this cycle, where they're like, oh, wait a minute, it just continues. They're already married. They already have children, which then raises the level of fear. Because on one hand, if they decide to leave, a lot of times these individuals have no job. They have no money. It's been controlled. So there's a real fear in losing custody of their children. Or if they do have a job and they do have money, knowing that their abuser could drag them through legal battles that are going to drain them of all of their money and all of their resources. And then worse yet, the abusers that hide their finances, hide their income, ensuring that their victims get absolutely no financial support for themselves or their children. And then after all of that, these children end up spending unsupervised time with that abusive ex. And then if they decide to stay, I did that too. The guilt and the shame, knowing that they're growing up in a toxic environment that normalizes this abuse. This is heavy stuff for an already emotionally individual to have to contemplate on a daily basis. Which one do you choose? And is anyone even going to believe you? Even after sharing all of this, I am going to tell you that there is hope. For those of you listening who are living with somebody who is abusing you, for those of you who know someone who is being abused, I broke the cycle. I left the fancy life, and I escaped with my son, my clothes, and my bicycle. And I started all over again with a mattress on the floor. It's time to set boundaries. It's time to distance ourselves in order to break the cycle of generational abuse. Three key words that I want you to walk away with. 1, community. If you are someone living with this, if you know someone living with this, you need community. This is invisible abuse. You cannot see it. You need to be around people, community, and professionals who can see it. 2nd is educate. Everybody needs to know what coercive control looks like, so that when you see the red flags, you can save yourself and others. Know what a healthy relationship looks like, and know what healthy communication looks like. And lastly, network. The United States has 5 states that have laws that have implemented laws to protect these individuals. There are 10 more in the process. Where is Florida in that mix? Nowhere. We have to set up workshops in order to educate our police officers, our judges, and our counselors on this form of abuse, coercive control. This abuse thrives in silence. Today, we have started to create a ripple effect to break that silence. Somebody needs to believe her. Will it be you? Thank you.